Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea was restless that night, churning like a creature in pain. Black waves crashed against the cliffs of Pike, spraying salt and foam upon the cold stone halls of House Greyjoy. The wind howled through the broken towers, carrying with it the cries of gulls and the smell of storm. Beneath that wind, beneath the echoing roar of the waves, a whisper lingered, a whisper of return. For the Crow's Eye was coming home. Euron Greyjoy had not been seen upon the Iron Islands for near a decade. Some said he had been exiled by Balon for crimes too foul to speak of. Others claimed he had sailed east and been swallowed by the smoking sea, his ship dashed upon the ruins of Valyria. But the truth, as ever, was darker still. On that night, as the storm raged, Aaron Damphair stood upon the wet stones of the strand, the surf lapping around his bare feet. The waves tugged at his robes of rough, salt-stiff cloth, and his long, tangled hair clung to his face. He was the priest of the drowned god now, no longer the proud younger brother, no longer a warrior or sailor. The sea had claimed him and made him its prophet. Yet even the drowned god's chosen could feel fear. He had dreamed the storm 3 nights past. He had seen a black ship with red sails, its prow shaped like a kraken's maw, and its crew eyeless and tongueless, singing soundless songs. Upon the deck stood a man with a patch over one eye, a man smiling against the storm. The dream had woken him trembling. And now, before dawn, the shape of that same ship was appearing out of the fog. The silence. Euron felt his breath catch as the great vessel came gliding toward the shore, her hull as dark as tar, her sails crimson and soaked with rain. She made no sound as she came, no shouts from the crew, no creak of timber, only the whisper of water against wood. When she grounded upon the shingle, no anchor fell, no ropes were thrown. Figures moved across her deck, pale shapes that did not speak. Then Euron appeared. He descended from the ship like a man returning from the dead. His cloak billowed, its edges wet and ragged. His hair was black as pitch, and the patch that covered his left eye was made of fine leather, bound with a strip of silver. But it was the other eye that caught the light, the right eye, pale and cold and full of mockery, the color of a winter sea. "Brother," Euron said, his voice smooth and low, almost amused. "The drowned god sends his prophet to greet me. How kind." Euron stared at him, unable to speak. He felt as though the wind itself had stopped. "You should not have come back," he managed at last. "You were banished, cast out by Balon's word. The sea does not welcome those who mock its laws." Euron smiled thinly. "The sea welcomes all, little brother. It is only men who draw lines and speak of laws. The sea takes what it will." Behind him, his silent crew stood watching. Their eyes were dull, their mouths scarred and twisted, tongueless, everyone. Aaron's stomach turned. "What have you done?" he whispered. Euron stepped closer until they were but a pace apart. Rain ran down his face, and his smile widened. "What I have always done," he said. "I've sailed further than any Ironborn ever dared. I have seen wonders and horrors beyond your prayers, and I have brought something back." He lifted his hand, and from beneath his cloak he drew a strange horn, black as obsidian, carved with twisting runes that shimmered faintly even in the gloom. Around its rim were bands of red gold, and along its length were faint scars, as though the horn had been burned. Euron took an involuntary step backward. That thing reeks of sorcery. Of power, Euron corrected softly. True power. The kind the drowned god never granted you. The wind rose again, tearing at their cloaks. Lightning split the sky, and for an instant, the black horn gleamed like a weapon forged in some other world. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Euron hid it once more beneath his cloak. "Tell Balan that his brother has returned," he said, turning back toward his ship. "Tell him the crow's eye has sailed from the ends of the earth, and he brings the storm with him." As the silence drifted back into the dark waters, Euron stood rooted in place, the waves slapping against his legs. He tried to pray, but no words would come. Only the thunder answered. He knew then that the dreams had been warnings. The storm that broke that night upon the Iron Islands was not of wind and wave alone. It was the shadow of Euron Greyjoy's return, a shadow that would drown them all if left unchecked. And so, as dawn broke gray and cold over Pike, Euron swore to uncover what his brother had done in those long, silent years across the sea. For somewhere in that darkness lay a secret that had made Euron what he was now. And secrets, he knew, were like the sea. They swallowed everything. The dawn came dull and pale over the Iron Islands, with a sky the color of cold steel. The storm had passed, but the sea remained swollen and gray, rolling against the cliffs of Pike with a slow, heavy rhythm. Euron Greyjoy stood in the surf once more, his robe clinging to him, his long hair salted and tangled. His eyes were hollow from a night without rest. Euron's return had poisoned the wind itself. The Ironborn whispered of it before noon. The silence had come ashore at Lordsport. Its black sails had been seen from the cliffs of Great Wick. Some said that Euron's crew were demons dressed in the skin of men. Others, that his ship was built from the ribs of sea dragons. There was talk of strange music that no ear could hear, and of Euron's laughter echoing through the mists. Balan Greyjoy, the Lord Reaper of Pike, summoned his priests and captains to his hall that very day. Euron came dripping from the sea, as was his custom, and stood beside the salt throne. His elder brother was as hard and thin as the rocks of the island, his beard shot with gray, his eyes still fierce. "Euron," Balon said, his voice flat as stone, "has broken his exile." The captains muttered among themselves. "He dares the wrath of his own blood," said Torwald Drum, a broad man with sea-weathered skin. "Let him be drowned for it." But Balon did not answer. His gaze had turned to Euron. "You saw him?" "I did," Euron said, his voice rough with the sea. "He came in the night upon a ship of death. His men have no tongues, no voices. He brings with him a horn wrought of black glass and fire. I felt it, brother. It is unclean." "Always the priest," sneered Victarion from the side, his mailed hand resting upon the hilt of his sword. "You see demons in every wave. Euron is mad, aye, but he's no sorcerer." Euron's eyes found Victarion's, and for a moment the two brothers stared at one another, the priest and the warrior. "He is more than mad," Euron said quietly. "The drowned god whispers that he has walked in places where men are not meant to go." Balan lifted his hand for silence. "Enough. The crow's eye has returned, and he will learn that there is only one Lord in Pike." But even as he spoke, Euron saw the shadow cross his brother's face. Balan feared Euron more than he would ever confess. That night, Euron returned to his sea cave upon the cliffs of Old Week. The tide was high, the waves booming like drums in the dark. He knelt in the cold water and prayed to the drowned god for guidance, for strength, for understanding. Yet the sea offered no comfort. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Euron's face, the pale eye gleaming, the smile that promised ruin. He dreamt again, though he had not meant to sleep. He was beneath the waves, drifting through black water. Around him moved shapes that might have been fish or men. Their mouths opened, but no sound came, only bubbles rising to the surface. Then he saw it, the silence, gliding through the depths as if it were alive. Its sails spread like the fins of a monstrous ray. Upon its prow stood Euron, his cloak billowing like ink. He raised the horn to his lips, and from it came a sound so vast that even the sea trembled. The water burned, turning to steam, and a voice echoed in Aeron's skull, low, ancient, full of hunger. When he woke, he was gasping, choking on seawater. The tide had risen nearly to his chest. He left the cave before dawn, his heart pounding, and went seeking the truth of what he had seen. There were men who had sailed with Euron in his exile, though few lived to speak of it. Those who had returned had come back changed, haunted, hollow-eyed, afraid of the dark. Euron found one such man at Naga's Hill, a drunk who called himself Torgon the Black. He had once been a sailor aboard the Silence. At first the man refused to speak. Only after Euron poured him ale and whispered the prayers of the drowned god did he begin to talk. His voice was thin and broken. "He took us east," Torgon said, "further than any man should go. Past Ib, past Leng, even past Ashai. The waters turned black there. The stars were wrong. We thought the sea itself was dying." "What did he seek?" Euron asked. Torgon's eyes darted like a trapped animal's. "He said he would find the land of the dragon lords, Valyria. We told him it was cursed, that no man could sail there and live. He laughed. Gods help me, he laughed." "And he went?" "Aye. Through the smoking sea we sailed. The air burned our throats. The waves hissed with fire. We saw towers made of stone that glowed like embers, and in the ruins, shadows moved. He walked among them. Walked. We thought he'd be burned alive, but he came back with that horn. Said it was made from the bone of a dragon, and that its song could wake them from death." Euron felt his blood run cold. "And the crew? Some went mad. Some threw themselves into the sea. The rest..." Torgon shuddered. "He cut their tongues out when we reached the Isles again, said their silence was the price of secrets." Before Euron could ask more, Torgon seized his arm. "Don't cross him, priest. He's not the same man who left here. The crow's eye has seen the dark beneath the world, and it saw him back. That night, the drunkard was found drowned, face down in the surf. Whether by accident or by Euron's hand, none could say. But Euron knew. Euron was silencing his past. From that day, the damp hair moved carefully. He spoke little, but listened much. The Iron Islands were changing, the men restless, the air thick with talk of new wars and plunder. Euron's black ship was seen more and more often, its sails red against the gray horizon, and always the soundless crew stood upon its deck like ghosts. The storm had returned to Pike, and it wore a human face. Euron prayed again to the drowned god, but the sea remained cold and silent. Deep in his heart, he began to wonder if even his god feared what his brother had become. The crow's eye had come home, and with him, something far older than the Greyjoy name. The days that followed were heavy with unease. Across the Iron Islands, the news of Euron's return spread like fire through dry grass. The fisherfolk whispered it to one another in the taverns, and the reavers spoke of it with wary awe. The crow's eye had returned from the ends of the earth, they said, with treasures and power beyond imagining. Some called him mad, others said he was touched by gods older than the drowned one. At Pike, Balon Greyjoy brooded. His hall was filled with the sound of wind and crashing sea, and his temper grew as wild as the tide. Victarion, ever his war captain, urged him to strike first. "Let me take the Iron Victory," he said, "and send the Crow's Eye back to the deep where he belongs." But Balon shook his head. "No, Euron will come. He always does. Let him stand before me. I will not have my brother's death whispered as murder." In his sea cave, Euron Damphair prayed again and again, his knees raw from the saltstone. The dreams had grown worse. He saw ships burning upon a black sea and a great horn sounding across the waves. He saw his brother crowned in iron, his pale eye glimmering as the world drowned beneath him. He woke one morning to the sound of bells tolling across Pike. The air was thick with mist, and the gulls circled low and shrieking. Aaron climbed the cliffs barefoot, water dripping from his hair, his heart a stone within him. He reached the rope bridge that linked the towers of Pike, and there he saw the shapes gathered at the parapet. Balon Greyjoy had fallen. The waves thundered below, white and merciless. His body lay broken upon the rocks, twisted like driftwood. The men said the wind had taken him as he crossed the bridge, that the storm had been fierce in the night. But Aaron felt the lie in those words as surely as he felt the sea's pull. The Crow's Eye had come home, and the wind had obeyed him. Victarion stood silent beside the body, his face hard as iron. "He was old," he said. "The bridge is treacherous." Euron stared at him. "You think me a fool, brother? You think I do not see his hand in this?" Victarion did not meet his gaze. "Euron will claim the Sea Stone chair, and the captains will follow him." "Not if they remember their god," Euron said darkly. But even as he spoke, the black sails were rising in the distance. The silence had returned to Pike once more. When Euron entered the hall, he came not as a man in mourning, but as a lord in triumph. He wore a cloak of dark leather lined with kraken skin, and at his throat a chain of strange metal links that gleamed like oil. His pale eye swept the room, and when it fell upon Euron, he smiled as if greeting an old friend. "Such sad tidings," he said softly. "Our brother has met the sea at last. May the drowned god welcome him." Euron's voice trembled with anger. "You mock the god with your tongue, Crow's Eye. You sent him to the waves yourself." Euron raised a brow. "Do you accuse me of fratricide, priest?" "I name you kinslayer and curse you," Euron said. "The sea will not forgive such sin." For a heartbeat, silence filled the hall. Then Euron laughed, low and cruel. "The sea forgives all who take from it boldly, Damphair, and I have taken more than any man alive." He turned to the captains gathered there, men of Saltcliff, Harlaw, and Great Week. "I have sailed where none of you have dared. I have walked in the ashes of Valyria and heard the screams of dragons in their graves. I bring you power beyond your dreams. I will make the Ironborn kings once more, not of these rocks, but of all Westeros. The lands of green men will kneel before us, or they will burn." Some shouted in approval. Others watched in silence, unsure, afraid. Aaron saw the hunger in their faces, the longing for plunder, the lure of glory. The Crow's Eye knew his people well. That night, Euron gathered his followers and went among the captains, urging them to remember the drowned god's will. "No man may rule save by the sea's blessing," he told them. "We shall hold a king's moot, as in the old days. Let the god decide who shall sit the sea stone chair." The word spread quickly, and soon the call went forth across all the islands. When Euron heard of it, he only smiled. "A king's moot, is it?" Then let the drowned god choose, if he dares. The day of the moot dawned cold and gray. The captains gathered at Naga's hill, where the bones of the great sea dragon lay. Their banners flapped in the wind, and the waves crashed below. The salt wind carried the scent of kelp and smoke, and the murmur of thousands filled the air. Victarion stood grimly beside Euron, while the others, lords, reavers, and old sea dogs, waited to cast their choice. Euron raised his hands and called out the ancient prayer, his voice echoing across the hill. Let the sea judge. Let the god choose the one who shall lead his people. Victarion spoke first, his voice deep and steady. I am Victarion, Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet. I have fought for my people, bled for my king, and I ask your voices. A cheer went up, but not all shouted. Then came Asha, proud and defiant, claiming her right as Baelin's daughter. She spoke of wisdom and unity, but the captains murmured, some jeering, some laughing. Last came Euron. He strode to the bones of Naga with the ease of a man walking his own deck. He said nothing at first. Instead, he drew forth the black horn, its runes shimmering faintly. The wind seemed to hush as he lifted it. This, he said, is Dragonbinder. I found it in the ruins of the Dragon Lords, and its song can wake dragons from stone. I offer you not words, but fire. I will give you dragons, brothers, and with them, the world. Then he blew the horn. The sound that came forth was like the death cry of the sea itself, long, deep, and terrible. The sky seemed to darken, and the captains fell to their knees, clutching their ears. Smoke poured from the horn's mouth, and the air burned with heat. When it ended, the man who had sounded it fell dead, blood steaming from his lungs. Euron smiled. It is not a toy for the weak. The captains shouted his name then, some in fear, some in awe, but all knew that the sea had chosen, or perhaps something older had. Euron felt his heart break. The crow's eye had won. That night, as fires burned upon Naga's hill, Euron Greyjoy was crowned king of the Isles in the north. The wind howled across the cliffs, carrying his laughter to the sea. Euron turned away from the sight, his hands trembling. He had prayed for the sea to judge, and it had answered with a monster. The wind was cold upon Naga's hill. The last of the torches guttered in the night, their flames trembling before the sea's breath. The captains and kingsmen had gone, their shouts fading into the distance, leaving only the bones of the sea dragon and the hush of the waves below. Aaron Damphair knelt in the wet sand beside the surf, the salt wind stinging his eyes. His hands trembled as he lifted them to the black water. "Why, O drowned god?" he whispered. "Why have you given him this power?" But the sea was silent. It hissed and sighed as always, deaf to the cries of men. Above him, the stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and the moon was a faint, pale ghost. The night itself seemed to crouch low, listening. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled. He rose slowly, his joints stiff, his heart heavy. The crow's eye had been crowned king. The captains had bent their knees, and the old ways had been twisted to serve a darker will. Aaron had seen it in their eyes, the awe, the fear, the hunger. Euron had promised them dragons, and they had listened like children to a liar's tale. He could still hear the sound of the horn. It haunted him, that deep, burning cry that had made the air itself tremble. He had seen the smoke pouring from its mouth, felt the heat on his face though he stood a dozen paces away, and when the man who had blown it fell dead, the crow's eye had only smiled. That was not the smile of a king, Euron thought. It was the smile of a beast that had learned to speak. He turned from the shore and began the long climb toward the cliffs. The path wound upward through sharp rocks slick with spray, the sea booming below. As he climbed, his mind returned again to his dreams, the same visions that had tormented him for weeks. The black ship gliding through the deep, the horn's terrible cry, the dragons stirring beneath the sea. He had thought they were warnings. Now he feared they were prophecies. By the time he reached his cave, the first gray light of dawn was spreading across the horizon. He entered and sank to his knees before the small stone altar, its surface crusted with salt. "Drowned God," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "Guide me. Show me the way to end this blasphemy. I am your servant." He waited. The sea whispered in the dark, but no voice came. It was then that he heard the footsteps. They were soft but sure, the tread of men who knew how to walk in silence. Euron turned, and a shadow filled the mouth of the cave. A man stepped forward, tall, broad, armored in dull steel. His beard was streaked with gray, his eyes cold as the northern sea. "Victarion," Euron said, rising, "you should not be here." His brother's gaze was unreadable. "He sent for you," Victarion said at last. "Euron commands that you come to him. He means to speak with you before he sails." Euron felt the chill in his bones deepen. Sails? To where? To the east. He means to make good on his promise, to seek dragons. Victarion's mouth twisted as though the words tasted bitter. "He says the world will bow before the Iron Islands once more." "The drowned god forbids such madness," Euron said. "He blasphemes. He toys with powers that are not meant for mortal hands." Victarion said nothing. For a moment, the two men stood facing each other, the sound of the surf echoing through the cave. Then Euron saw it, the flicker of something like shame in his brother's eyes. "Victarion," he said softly, "you know this will end in ruin. You've seen what he is." "I know only that he is my king," Victarion said, his jaw tightening, "and I am bound to serve." Euron's heart sank. "You are bound to the sea, not to him." But Victarion only turned away. "Come. If you refuse him, he will not ask again." They rowed together to the shore, where the silence lay waiting. The ship looked even darker in the pale light, her hull slick with rain, her figurehead carved like a kraken devouring a man. The mute crew watched in silence as the two brothers boarded. Euron waited upon the deck, leaning against the rail as though the world belonged to him. He was dressed in black once more, his cloak snapping in the wind. The pale eye gleamed like a shard of ice. "Ah, the holy man comes," he said. "Tell me, damp hair, does your god still whisper in your ear? Or has he fallen silent, like all the rest?" Euron ignored the taunt. "Why summon me?" "To bless my voyage," Euron said with a smile. "You are the priest, are you not? Give me the drowned god's favor, and I shall bring him glory beyond imagining." "Glory?" Euron spat. "You would bring him abomination. The seas you seek are cursed. The fires of Valyria burn still beneath those waves." Euron stepped closer. "And yet I have walked their shores and lived. Tell me, brother, which is greater, the god who hides in the depths, or the man who defies him and returns unburned?" Euron's voice shook with fury. "You dare set yourself above the gods?" Euron's smile widened, cold and thin. "I am the storm, brother. The sea and sky and every wave that breaks upon these rocks. They belong to me. The world is full of gods, Euron, and none of them are worthy of our worship. I have seen them, dead things, dreaming in the dark. The drowned god is but one more drowned fool." Before Euron could answer, Euron seized his arm, his grip iron. "But I will be more. I will be their doom." For a heartbeat, Euron saw something behind that pale eye, something vast and terrible, a shadow that seemed to stretch beyond the man, beyond the sea, into the black heart of the world. He wrenched free, gasping. "You are cursed," he whispered. "Whatever you found across the sea has poisoned your soul." Euron only laughed. "Perhaps, but poison can be a power if one knows how to wield it." He turned away, gazing out toward the gray horizon. The sails above them shuddered, eager for wind. "Go now, Damphair. Pray for me if you must. When next I return, I will bring with me fire enough to burn the 7 kingdoms to ash." Euron stumbled from the ship, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The waves crashed around his feet as he reached the shore. Behind him, the silence began to drift away, her red sails unfurling like bloody wings. He fell to his knees in the surf, his tears lost to the tide. The sea roared in his ears, but the sound no longer comforted him. For the first time in his life, Euron Damphair feared the ocean. It no longer felt like his god's realm, it felt like Euron's. The silence vanished eastward upon the gray horizon, swallowed by fog and distance. Days passed, then weeks, and still no word came from her black sails. The Iron Islands grew restless beneath Euron's absence, though his shadow remained heavy upon them. His captains raided in his name, spilling blood upon the coasts of the Reach and the Westerlands. His banners, black kraken on red, flew from ships that had once sworn to Balon, and his mutes carried out his will without question or mercy. Euron Damphair retreated further from men and their madness. He took refuge upon Old Wick, in a lonely cavern carved by the waves. There, he prayed and fasted, seeking answers from the drowned god who had once spoken to him in dreams. But the god was silent still, as if the sea itself had turned its face away. At night, he dreamt of storms. He dreamt of the silence adrift upon a sea of fire, its sails torn, its crew burning but voiceless. He saw Euron upon the prow, his one pale eye fixed upon a black sun that hung above the horizon. From that sun came a noise, a deep, slow beat, like the heart of the world itself. It echoed through the dream until it seemed to pound within Euron's skull. When he woke, he tasted blood in his mouth. He began to wander among the villages of the Iron Islands, speaking to those who would still listen. "The sea remembers," he told them. "The drowned god watches. Euron's pride will bring doom upon us all." Some spat upon the ground and called him mad. Others crossed themselves and fled his path. Yet a few knelt and whispered prayers with him in the surf, their eyes filled with fear. It was in one such village, a small cluster of huts upon the cliffs of Great Wick, that a sailor came to him. The man was half-starved, his skin burned by salt and sun, his clothes in tatters. He claimed to have sailed with Euron, and to have escaped. Euron listened by the fire as the man spoke, his voice hoarse and shaking. "He took us east," the sailor said, "beyond the summer sea, past the isles where no man lives. The waters there are strange, still as glass, and the sky is never clear. He said we were bound for Valyria, and none dared question him." The man's hands trembled. "We saw things, shapes beneath the waves, following us for days. We heard whispers in the night, voices that came from the sea. Some men threw themselves overboard to silence them. Others went blind." Euron leaned forward. "And Euron?" "He never slept," the man said. He would stand at the bow, staring east, muttering to himself. He said the world was opening before him. He said he could hear it breathing. The sailor shuddered. One night, the water began to steam. A mist rose red as blood. We saw ruins rising from the depths, towers of black stone, twisted and sharp as knives. and there were lights within them. Not fire, something else. They pulsed like hearts. "What did he do?" Aaron asked, though dread already gripped his chest. "He laughed. He went ashore with his mutes. We waited 2 days. When he returned, he had the horn. He said it was the key to waking dragons, but he wasn't alone." The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "There was something with him. I never saw it clear, but it followed him back to the ship. The sea itself seemed afraid. The mutes wouldn't look at it. Euron told us to sail west, and the wind obeyed. When we reached the open sea, he cut out the tongues of half the crew. He said silence was the price of secrets." Euron felt the blood drain from his face. "And you escaped?" The sailor nodded weakly. "When a storm struck, I leapt into the sea. I thought I'd die, but the waves carried me here." He looked up, his eyes wide and wild. "You can't fight him, priest. He's not just a man anymore." Before Aaron could answer, the man began to cough. The sound was wet, deep in his chest. Blood spilled from his lips, dark and thick. Within moments, he collapsed beside the fire, dead. Aaron stared in horror. The sea wind howled through the cracks of the hut, and the flames shivered as though afraid. He buried the sailor at dawn, laying him in a grave above the high tide. As he worked, his thoughts burned with fury and dread. "He traffics with demons," Euron murmured. "He dares the fires of Valyria. He brings the darkness with him." That night, a new dream came to him, so vivid it felt more vision than sleep. He stood upon the shore of a black sea. The waves were still, the air hot and dry. Euron stood beside him, naked to the waist, his skin gleaming with sweat. In one hand he held the horn, in the other, a cup of gold. "Drink," Euron said, offering it. The liquid inside was thick and red. Euron refused, stepping back. "You mock the gods." Euron smiled. "I am what gods fear." Then he lifted the horn to his lips and blew. The sound tore through the world. The sea caught fire. Dragons rose from beneath the waves, wings of smoke, eyes burning like suns. And behind them, a shadow moved, vast and formless, older than the sea itself. Euron awoke screaming. The cave was full of echoes, and for a moment he thought the sound was still in the air. He fell to his knees, shaking, and plunged his hands into the cold tide. "Drowned God, hear me," he cried. "You must rise against this evil. Give me strength to stand against him." But again, there was only silence. When morning came, he left the cave and climbed the cliffs. From the highest point of Old Wyke, he gazed eastward, toward the mists that hid the world beyond the horizon. The wind tore at his robes, and the sea roared far below. He felt very small then, smaller than he had ever felt in all his years. The world was vast and cruel, and the gods, if they lived, were distant things, deaf to the cries of their servants. Yet even so, he would not yield. He turned from the sea and began to descend toward the villages. He would gather those who still listened, those who still remembered the old prayers. If Euron Greyjoy had brought darkness upon the world, then Aaron Damphair would bring the storm. And somewhere far across the waters, the Silence sailed on, her red sails gleaming in the dawn, her captain smiling as if he already knew the end of the tale. Weeks turned to months, and still no word came from the east. The Iron Islands lay beneath a gray shroud of rain and wind, their people uneasy, their lords divided. Euron's name was spoken in every hall and harbor, some with awe, some with hatred, many with fear. His fleets had sailed under the Black Kraken and returned with plunder from the Reach, from the Shields, from the coasts of Dorne. But their king, their crow's eye, had not returned. Aaron Damphair watched from his lonely cliffs as the ships came and went. He no longer counted the days. Time seemed as fluid and uncertain as the tides. His hair grew long and wild, his skin weathered by salt and storm. To some, he was no longer man but spirit, half priest, half ghost of the sea. Yet his heart burned still with purpose. In his dreams, he saw glimpses of the silence, a black ship adrift beneath strange stars, sailing through mists that glowed like embers. He saw men without tongues kneeling before Euron as he raised the horn, its runes alive with fire. And behind him, something vast stirred, its eyes like suns beneath the waves. The visions left him gasping, drenched in seawater, though he had not left his bed. He began to travel again, from isle to isle, preaching before the captains and their men. He spoke of the drowned god's wrath, of the doom that would come if they followed the crow's eye any longer. He has seen forbidden shores, Euron warned them. He has bartered his soul for power that no mortal should wield. The sea remembers, and it will take its price. Some listened, and a few even joined him, but most turned away. They had seen the treasures Euron's raids had brought: gold, slaves, and strange artifacts from the east. The crow's eye, they said, had fulfilled his promises. The Ironborn were feared again. Still, Euron would not relent. One evening, as the sun sank behind the cliffs of Great Week, he stood upon a high rock and spoke to the gathered reavers. "The sea is not silent," he said, his voice echoing over the waves. "It calls to us to cleanse our blood of this blight. We must rise before the storm breaks upon us all." A hush followed his words. Then a voice called out from the crowd, rough and mocking. "And who will lead us, priest? You?" Euron turned. The man who stepped forward wore armor of dark steel, and upon his chest was the kraken of House Greyjoy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his beard was bound with silver rings. Victarion. "You speak bold words against our king," Victarion said, "perhaps too bold." Euron's heart clenched. "He is your brother as well as mine. You have seen what he is. You know what he has done." Victarion's eyes were cold. "I know that he holds the Seastone chair, and that the fleets sail at his command. That is what matters." "The drowned god does not bow to kings," Euron said. "Nor should you." Victarion's jaw tightened. "You speak treason. I speak truth." The silence between them stretched taut as a drawn rope. The waves crashed below, and gulls wheeled overhead, their cries thin and sharp. At last, Victarion turned away. "Be careful, Damphair. Words are wind, but wind can drown a man when it comes with the tide." He left without another glance. Euron watched him go, his heart heavy. Victarion was a good man at heart, bound by oaths and duty, but he was also a man chained by fear. The crow's eye had poisoned even his strength. That night, as Euron knelt before his altar of stone and driftwood, he heard a sound that froze his blood. The low, distant moan of a horn carried by the wind. It was faint, as if from far across the sea, but unmistakable. The same sound that had once torn the air upon Naga's hill. He ran from his cave and climbed the cliffs. The night was black, the moon veiled, the sea a shifting mass of shadows. But there, far upon the horizon, he saw it. A flicker of light, red and unnatural. The silence had returned. By dawn, word had spread through every island. Euron Greyjoy was back. His fleet, smaller than when it had departed, rode heavy with strange spoils. The tales came swiftly, growing wilder with each retelling. Some said he had sailed to Valyria itself and stolen treasure from the ruins of dragon lords. Others swore he had found islands of gold and silver, guarded by spirits that served him now. But when Euron heard that the ships carried cages, iron cages sealed and silent, his heart turned to ice. He went to Pike that same day, braving the stormy seas in a small fishing boat. When he arrived, the island was alive with noise. Euron held court again, his laughter echoing through the halls. The reavers feasted, drinking from golden cups, their tables piled high with fruits and meats, unseen in the isles for generations. Euron entered unannounced, his hair wet, his robe clinging with sea salt. The music faltered, and the hall fell quiet. Euron sat upon the sea-stone chair, his black armor gleaming, his pale eye bright with amusement. "Brother," he said, smiling, "you come at last to bless my triumph." Aaron's voice was steady. "The drowned god blesses no man who brings shadows from the deep." Euron's smile widened. "Ah, but you should see what I've brought. Gifts for my loyal subjects, and perhaps a lesson for you." He clapped his hands, and the mutes dragged something into the hall, a cage wrought of dark iron, its bars twisted like roots. Inside, something moved. At first, Aaron thought it a man, but when it turned, he saw its eyes, black and glistening like wet stones. Its mouth opened, and a low hiss escaped, though no tongue was visible. The hall murmured in fear. "What devilry is this?" Euron demanded. "An emissary," Euron said lightly, "from a place you cannot name. They live beneath the waves of Valyria, in caverns where dragons sleep. They showed me wonders, brother. They taught me the language of storms." Euron's voice broke with anger. "You have unleashed damnation!" Euron rose from the sea-stone chair, his cloak flowing like a shadow. "No, little brother, I have brought enlightenment. The gods of this world are dead things, and I will take their place." He reached through the bars and brushed his hand against the creature's slick skin. It shuddered and pressed closer, like a hound seeking its master's touch. "Soon," Euron said softly, "the world will remember the name Greyjoy and tremble." Aaron turned and fled from the hall, his heart pounding. The sound of Euron's laughter followed him through the storm, echoing down the corridors like thunder. Outside, the sea raged against the rocks, wild and merciless. Aaron fell to his knees and prayed once more, his voice lost in the wind. He prayed not for victory, but for mercy, upon his people, upon his soul, upon the world that his brother meant to drown in madness. And far above, upon the tower of Pike, the pale eye of Euron Greyjoy watched the storm rise. The sea's fury battered the Iron Islands for 7 days and 7 nights. Waves higher than towers struck the cliffs of Pike, and the wind howled like a beast unchained. Fishermen swore that the water glowed red at night and that shapes, vast and shadowy, moved beneath the waves. None dared to sail. Even the gulls abandoned the coasts, crying as they fled inland. Within his cave on Old Wick, Aaron Damphair huddled beside the cold embers of his fire. The storm outside was no work of nature. He could feel it in his bones. The drowned god's wrath had always been wild, but never malicious. This storm felt alive, deliberate, as though guided by a cruel hand. Euron had returned, and the sea itself seemed to rage at his coming. When the tempest finally broke, the air was heavy and strange. The sky hung low and colorless, and the waters of the bay were the hue of iron. Euron stepped out onto the rocks and felt the hush that followed, the world holding its breath. His beard was stiff with salt, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. He looked to the east toward Pike. He would go again. For 3 days he traveled across the isles, by foot and by borrowed skiff, preaching to those who would hear him. He warned them that the crow's eye had woken dark things from the deep, that his ships carried blasphemies bound in iron, and that every man who bent the knee to him was marked by the sea's hatred. Some listened and made the sign of the drowned god. but many turned away. The crow's eye ruled now with gold and terror both. Those who defied him vanished. His mutes came in the night, silent, efficient, and merciless. By the time Euron reached Pike, he saw the smoke of great fires upon the cliffs. Euron Greyjoy was holding feast and council. The harbors were thick with ships, reavers from Great Week and Harlaw, from Orkmont and Saltcliffe, their decks heavy with loot from the Reach and the Shield Islands. The Ironborn had grown rich once more, and their king sat high upon his throne. Euron climbed the cliffs as the tide surged below, and when he entered the sea tower, the stench of wine and roasted meat filled the air. The hall was bright with torches, but the light seemed to cling to Euron as though reluctant to touch him. The crow's eye sat upon the seastone chair, his pale eye gleaming. Around him stood his captains and priests, men who had once followed Balan, now loyal to Euron's gold and promise of power. Euron strode forward, his wet robes trailing behind him like seaweed. The murmur of the hall fell away. "Brother," Euron said, smiling faintly, "you come again without invitation. I begin to think the sea brings you to me." "The sea brings me to rebuke you," Euron said. "You blaspheme in the sight of gods and men. The things you carry, the rites you perform, these are not of the drowned god. They are the work of demons." Euron leaned forward on the throne. "Demons? I have seen no demons, only the truth of the world. There is power in its depths, power enough to make gods tremble. I have tasted it." "You have cursed yourself," Aaron cried, "and you would curse us all." Euron's laughter rang through the hall, smooth and cold. "Cursed? No, brother, blessed. The weak fear what they cannot master. You kneel before your sea and call it holy. I look upon it and see what it truly is. A door." He gestured to one of his mutes, who stepped forward with an iron chest bound in chains. When it was opened, the men nearest gasped. Inside lay strange relics, black stones carved with twisting sigils, a shard of metal that shimmered as if alive, and a skull as long as a man's arm. Euron lifted the skull for all to see. "A dragon's child," he said softly. "I took it from the ruins of Valyria. The fires still burn there, you know, and in their light I saw wonders that would break a priest's mind." A murmur rippled through the hall. Aaron stared at the skull, his stomach turning. No man should bear such things. Euron set it down gently. "No man should, you say? Then perhaps I am no man." The words hung heavy in the air. He rose, and in his hand he held the horn, black, veined with red, its surface alive with faint light. "You remember this," he said. "Dragonbinder, the sound of it calls to beasts and to greater things. Would you hear it again, priest?" "Do not!" Euron shouted. "The last time it was sounded, a man's lungs burst in his chest. You defy the gods themselves." Euron only smiled and pressed the horn to his lips. The note that followed was lower than thunder, deeper than the sea. The torches flickered and went out. Men fell to their knees, clutching their ears. The air grew hot, and the stones of the hall trembled. Aaron felt it in his bones, felt the sound claw through him like a living thing. Then it stopped. When the torches flared again, Euron stood untouched. The mutes behind him swayed like men half dead. Their eyes rolled white. "You see?" Euron said softly. "The sea does not punish me. It serves." Aaron staggered back, his heart pounding. "You are not my brother. You are something else, something born of darkness." Euron laughed. "Perhaps. But darkness rules the world, damp hair. You pray to the deep, yet fear to look into it. I have looked, and what I saw gazed back and called me its son." The captains were silent. Even Victarion, standing grim and still near the throne, did not speak. Euron turned to them. "Soon we will sail again. I have sent word to Essos. Armies wait for us there, men and beasts both. We will bring the world to its knees. Let the green lands burn. Let the gods drown." He looked to Euron once more, his voice soft and mocking. "You should bless me, priest. When I am king of all men, I will make the sea your cathedral." Euron could not answer. He turned and fled the hall, the sound of Euron's laughter echoing behind him like the cry of gulls over a battlefield. Outside, the wind had risen again, whipping the waves into white fury. Euron fell to his knees upon the wet stones, the taste of salt sharp upon his tongue. He knew then that no prayer could save his brother. Euron Greyjoy had gone beyond the reach of gods. Only the sea itself could stop him now, and the sea had grown silent, but Euron Damphair was not yet ready to surrender. He rose, his heart hard as the rocks beneath his feet, and swore to bring the storm upon the Crow's Eye, even if it cost him his soul. For the world had turned dark, and he alone would stand against it. The wind off the sea carried the scent of rot and iron. Summer had turned, and the islands crouched beneath clouds swollen with storm. In the fishing hamlets of Old Week, the small folk spoke in whispers of strange lights beneath the waves, and ships returning with no crew aboard save the dead. Some said the drowned walked again, pale and waterlogged, with the mark of the kraken burned into their flesh. Others claimed to see Euron Greyjoy's shadow stretching across the horizon like the wings of some vast beast. Euron Damphair moved among them, gaunt and salt-stained, his hair long as seaweed, his eyes hollow but bright with purpose. Wherever he went, he carried his driftwood staff, the symbol of his calling, and with it, he called men back to the old ways, to faith, to the sea, to rebellion. "The Crow's Eye is no king," he told them. "He is a blight upon the salt throne, a mockery of all that we are. The drowned god will have his vengeance." He spoke in the fishing coves and on the decks of longships, in caves slick with spray, and before the tide pools that gleamed like mirrors of another world. He found listeners, old warriors, shipwrights, the broken and the fearful, but he found no army. The islands belonged to Euron now. His gold bought loyalty where faith could not, and his terror bound the rest. Still, Euron would not yield. One evening, as he preached upon a rocky strand, a shadow fell across the water. A longship was approaching, its sail black and red, its prow carved into the likeness of a kraken devouring a man. Euron felt his blood run cold. The silence had come for him. Its oars cut the sea like knives. No voice called, no song was sung. When it grounded upon the shingle, the mutes came forth, their faces as pale as bone, their mouths scarred and sewn shut. They bore no weapons, yet none dared to resist them. Behind them came Victarion, grim and silent, his armor damp with sea mist. "Brother," he said, his tone flat, "Euron summons you." Euron raised his staff. "I will not kneel before the devil's throne." Victarion's jaw tightened. "Then he will come for you himself." As if in answer, a voice carried over the wind, smooth and mocking. "No need. I am here." Euron descended from the ship, his black cloak snapping in the gale. The patch over his left eye gleamed with silver, and his right, cold and bright as a winter sea, fixed upon Euron with a look half amusement, half hunger. "My wandering brother," he said softly, "still praying to a god that never answers?" Euron stood firm. "The drowned god hears all who speak with faith, but you are deaf to him, for you serve darker powers." Euron's smile widened. "Darker? Perhaps, but stronger. Come, priest, walk with me. I have something to show you." He gestured toward the cliffs, and the mutes followed, silent as shadows. Victarion lingered a moment, his eyes heavy with something like pity, then turned and trudged after his king. Euron hesitated only a heartbeat before following. They climbed the narrow path up the cliffside. The sea crashed below, white spray bursting against the rocks. When they reached the top, the crow's eye led them to a great pit carved into the stone, a pool of black water that steamed though the air was cold. Euron stopped at its edge. "Do you know what this is, brother?" "It reeks of sorcery," Euron said. Euron laughed softly. "It is a gift, a pool filled from the veins of Valyria itself. The fire that burns beneath the sea flows through it. Look." He drew a knife and sliced his palm, letting blood fall into the water. Instantly, the surface rippled, glowing faintly red. The mists above it thickened and began to twist, taking shape. Vague at first, then clearer. Euron saw towers rising from molten waves, wings beating against a crimson sky, and eyes vast and golden staring through the veil. Euron's voice was low, almost tender. "Do you see, Damphair? The world beyond this one, waiting to be claimed?" Euron recoiled, clutching his driftwood staff. "These are no gifts, they are lies. You meddle with forces that will consume you." Euron turned toward him, his smile gone. "Consume me? No, brother. They have chosen me. The world is dying, Euron. The green lands rot, kings fall, and even the sea grows weary. I will give it purpose again." "You would make yourself a god," Euron spat. "I would make myself worthy of the name." The vision in the pool shifted. Euron saw ships, hundreds of them, sailing beneath black sails. He saw fire falling from the sky, and cities burning. He saw Euron standing upon a mountain of skulls, the horn at his lips, and dragons circling above him. The sound that came from the water was not of this world. Euron fell to his knees, clutching his ears. "Stop this! You defy all that is holy!" Euron sheathed his knife. "You think holiness lies in drowning men for prayers? Your God is small, brother. Mine is vast, and he is awake." The light faded, and the pool stilled. Euron's mutes began to descend the path once more, their faces expressionless. Victarion turned away, saying nothing. Euron looked down at Euron, who still knelt trembling on the stone. "Do not fight me, brother. When I return from my next voyage, I will have no need for faith or thrones. I will rule from the sky and sea alike." He turned and strode away, his laughter carried by the wind. Euron remained there long after they were gone, staring into the dark water. He saw his reflection wavering on its surface, pale and thin, the eyes of a man haunted by visions too terrible to bear. The tide rose slowly, lapping at the edges of the pit. When it reached his knees, Euron closed his eyes. "Drowned God," he whispered, "grant me strength. Let the sea rise against this abomination." The waves answered with a hiss, as if mocking him. And yet, beneath that sound, he thought he heard something else. A faint, deep pulse, like a heartbeat within the water itself. For a moment, the black pool shivered, and a shadow passed beneath its surface, vast and slow. Euron stepped back, cold spreading through his veins. The sea was not silent after all. It was listening. Whether in mercy or in wrath, he could not yet tell. But Euron Greyjoy had woken something that had long slept beneath the waves, and now the world itself seemed to stir. As the sun sank behind the horizon, the priest of the drowned god turned his face to the storm and began to pray, not for his brother's soul, but for the strength to drown him. The sea was cruel that season, wilder than any Euron Damphair had known in all his years. The waves struck the cliffs like siege engines, and the rain fell day upon day until even the strongest halls of the Iron Islands began to crumble. Crops rotted in their fields, and fish fled the bays, as if all the life of the sea itself sought to escape the shadow that now lay upon the world. Word came from the east. Euron Greyjoy had set sail once more. He had left Victarion to command the Iron Fleet and taken a smaller company with him, his mutes, his horn, and his blackest ships. He was bound for old Valyria again, it was said, though none dared to speak of it loudly. Euron heard this news from a trembling sailor who had seen the fleet depart. The man swore that as the silence passed beyond sight, the wind died and the sea turned as still as glass. Then the sky darkened, and from the depths rose a sound, not thunder, not wave, but something older and alive. The crow's eye was calling to the deep. Euron gathered what followers he could, sailors and priests, the remnants of old faith that still clung to the drowned god's mercy. They met in hidden coves, whispering prayers beneath the roar of waves, baptizing one another in the freezing tide. Euron spoke to them with fire in his voice. "The crow's eye seeks to be God over men," he told them. "But we will show him that no man may master the sea. It will rise against him as it rose against the old ones of legend. We are the drowned gods chosen, and we shall bring the flood." They listened, fearful and trembling. Yet he saw in their eyes the same doubt that haunted his own heart. The drowned god had been silent too long. That night, Euron prayed upon the shore until the tide crept around his knees. The sky was full of lightning, and the surf shone white as bone. He begged for a sign. When at last he turned toward his cave, he saw a figure waiting there upon the rocks. It was a woman, pale and thin, her hair tangled with kelp. For a moment, Euron thought her a corpse cast up by the sea, until her eyes opened and met his. They gleamed faintly blue, like light beneath the waves. "You seek your god," she said, her voice soft as surf. "He sleeps beneath the storm, and your brother seeks to wake that which must never wake." Euron's breath caught. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head, her hair streaming down her shoulders. "A servant of the depths. The sea remembers, priest. It remembers the old blood, the first drowning, when the world was made new. Your crow's eye would unmake it." Her words struck him like a blow. "Tell me what must be done," he said. She reached out a hand, her fingers long and cold. "When next he sounds the horn, the sea will open. You must stand against him then, for only the drowned may stand before the tide." "What tide?" Euron asked. The woman smiled faintly, a sorrowful curve of lips, the one that drowns the world. Then the waves struck the rocks, and she was gone, vanished into foam and spray. Euron stood long after, staring at the empty sea. He did not sleep that night. When dawn came, he gathered his followers. "The time has come," he told them. "The crow's eye calls to the abyss, and the abyss stirs. We must sail." They took what ships they could, old fishing boats, half-rotted longships, whatever the storm had not claimed, and set forth. The sea fought them at every turn, but Euron would not yield. For 7 days they sailed, following the path Euron had taken east. On the 7th night, the water began to steam. The air grew heavy and hot, thick with the stench of brimstone. Red lightning danced across the clouds. Ahead lay a mist the color of blood, swirling like smoke upon the sea. The crew murmured prayers, their voices small against the roar of the storm. Euron stood at the prow, his hands clenched around his staff. He felt the sea beneath him shudder as if alive, and then he saw it. The silence emerged from the mist, its black hull glistening with oil and blood, its sails tattered but burning with a dull crimson glow. The ship glided toward them without oar or wind. Upon its deck stood Euron Greyjoy. He wore no armor, no crown, only a cloak of scales that seemed to shift like water. His pale eye gleamed, and his mouth curved in that same terrible smile. In his hands, he held the horn. "Brother," he called, his voice carrying clear across the storm. "You came after all. Have you come to bless me?" Euron's followers fell to their knees, some weeping, some praying. The very air seemed to hum with the horn's promise. "You mock all that is sacred," Euron shouted. "The sea will devour you." Euron lifted the horn, then let it try. He blew. The sound split the sky. It was as if the world itself screamed. The sea boiled, and the clouds tore open. From beneath the waves rose fire, great tongues of red flame, twisting into the shape of wings. The water heaved as though a mountain moved beneath it. Euron fell to his knees, clutching his head. The sound tore through his soul, burning and cold all at once. He saw visions again, dragons bursting from the deep, their bodies made of smoke and shadow, their eyes bright as molten gold. He saw cities drowned in a single night, men praying to gods who could not save them. Through it all, Euron stood laughing, his cloak whipping in the wind. The horn's song did not end. It grew, deeper, louder, until the waves themselves seemed to sing with it. Then the silence began to sink. The sea rose up in fury, swallowing the black ship whole. The mutes screamed without voices, their mouths open in soundless agony. But Euron did not flee. He raised his arms to the sky as the waves closed over him, and the last thing Euron saw was that single pale eye, blazing with madness and triumph. Then all was dark. When Euron woke, he was upon a shore he did not know. The storm was gone, the sea calm once more. Around him lay wreckage, broken ships, dead men, the remnants of his followers. He tried to rise, but his body was heavy, his lungs full of salt. He crawled to the water's edge and stared at the horizon. There was no sign of the silence, no trace of Euron Greyjoy, only the calm, endless sea. He began to laugh then, quietly at first, then louder, until his voice broke. The sound echoed across the rocks, thin and mad. The sea had taken the crow's eye. But whether it had claimed him or crowned him, Euron could not say. And as he knelt there beneath the gray sky, he thought he heard it again. The faint, far sound of a horn, deep and distant, calling from beneath the waves. The sun rose over the sea like a wound reopening. It bled across the waves, crimson and gold, and in its light, the wreckage of the storm lay strewn for leagues, a forest of broken masts and splintered hulls, a graveyard of drowned men. The gulls circled low, their cries sharp as knives, and the water stank of blood and pitch. Aaron Damphair crawled from the shallows, coughing seawater. His robes clung to him like a shroud. Every bone in his body ached, and his skin was scored with cuts from coral and stone. He lay gasping upon the sand, the surf lapping at his feet. When he tried to rise, his legs betrayed him. He fell again, face pressed against the wet earth, and whispered the words that had always steadied him. What is dead may never die, but rises again, harder and stronger. But the prayer gave him no comfort. The waves answered only with silence. He had seen the silence vanish beneath the sea, swallowed whole by its master's own madness. He had seen fire and water devour one another, the sky turn to flame, and the world break upon itself. Yet he lived. Why? Perhaps the drowned god had spared him to bear witness, or perhaps even the sea had forgotten him. When at last he stood, he saw that he was not alone. Bodies lay along the shore, his followers, men who had trusted in his faith, their faces gray and still. He knelt beside them one by one, closing their eyes and whispering the old blessings. When he reached the last of them, a boy no older than 16, he felt tears burning behind his lids. "They followed you, drowned God," he murmured. "Was it into your arms or into oblivion?" The tide crept higher as he worked, covering their feet, their chests, their faces. When the sea had claimed them all, he rose and turned toward the horizon. The east was shrouded in mist. The sky above it pulsed faintly red, like the last embers of a dying fire. Euron had gone that way. Perhaps he still sailed beneath those clouds, or perhaps he had drowned as the others had. Euron prayed that he had, but in the depth of his heart, he knew better. The crow's eye did not drown. He walked. The beach stretched endlessly ahead, broken by rocks black with barnacle and kelp. By nightfall, he found the mouth of a stream and followed it inland. The land was strange. Hills of ash and twisted stone, trees grown black as if burned long ago. He smelled sulfur in the air, and the ground steamed beneath his bare feet. It was no island he knew. When darkness fell, he made a small fire and huddled beside it, wrapping his arms around himself for warmth. He dreamt again, as he had always dreamt, visions of water and fire, of horns and wings and eyes like suns. But this dream was different. He stood upon a black shore beneath a sky of smoke. The waves were blood. Upon them floated the silence, her hull aflame. Euron stood upon her deck, whole and smiling. The horn hung at his side, and his single eye shone brighter than the fire. "You cannot kill the sea, brother," Euron said, his voice echoing across the water. "It lives in me now." "What have you done?" Euron cried. "What you feared to do," Euron answered. "I have seen the gods beneath the waves. I have drowned and been reborn, harder and stronger." He spread his arms, and the sea behind him rose like a wall. Within it moved shapes vast and terrible, things with wings and coils and mouths that opened wider than the sky. "Behold, brother," he said, "the true drowned god." Euron awoke, screaming. His fire had gone out, and the night was black and cold. The wind howled through the ravine, carrying with it the sound of the sea, though it was miles away. He fell to his knees and pressed his hands to the earth, trembling. "Drowned God, deliver me," he whispered. "Deliver us all." The next day, he followed the stream further inland, until he reached a pool that steamed like a wound in the earth. The water was black and thick, and beneath its surface he thought he saw movement. Slow, sinuous, waiting. He backed away and made the sign of the god across his chest. By dusk, he found a ruin, a ring of old stones, weathered and half-buried in ash. At its center lay an altar carved from obsidian, smooth and cold. Upon it was a single mark, a spiral of 9 lines radiating from a central eye, Euron's mark. Euron's breath caught. He felt the air grow heavy, as if the world itself were holding still. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, though the sky was clear. He knew then that his brother had not perished. The crow's eye had come here before him, perhaps years ago, perhaps in dreams. Whatever this land was, it had been waiting for him. That night, Euron built no fire. He sat before the altar, staring into the dark, and spoke softly to the wind. "You took him once," he said to the sea, though no water could hear him here. "You must take him again. He is beyond my power. Only you can drown what he has become." The wind whispered through the stones, but whether it was answer or mockery, he could not tell. He slept and woke with the dawn, cold and hungry. He turned toward the west, toward home, if such a place still waited for him. The journey was long and bitter. His feet bled upon the rocks, and his body grew thin as driftwood. Once he saw a ship upon the horizon, black sails, red as rust in the light. But when he blinked, it was gone. He reached the Iron Islands as autumn broke. The land was gray, the people gaunt. They spoke of strange storms, of the dead rising from the sea, of a voice heard in the wind that called itself king of salt and smoke. Euron's voice, the crow's eye, had returned before him. His fleets now ruled the sunset sea, his name whispered across every shore. The kings of the green lands trembled at his coming. Euron listened in silence, his heart sinking like a stone. All he had done, all he had suffered, had changed nothing. The crow's eye lived, and his power had only grown. That night, Euron climbed the cliffs above Pike, the wind tearing at his hair. He looked out over the black water and felt the weight of years upon him. Below, the waves crashed endlessly against the rocks. He raised his hands to the sky. "Drowned God," he cried, "if you are just, strike him down, end this blasphemy." Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and deep. For a heartbeat, he thought he heard laughter in the sound, and far upon the horizon, where the sea met the sky, a single red sail caught the dawn. The red sail upon the horizon lingered for 3 days, a wound upon the sea. Each morning it came closer, and with each night the winds grew colder, sharper, whispering through the cracks of Pike's broken towers, like voices from the deep. The people of the Iron Islands huddled in their halls, muttering prayers to the drowned god, though none dared to say whose ship it was that approached. But Euron Damphair knew. He felt it in his bones, in the ache behind his eyes, in the pull of the tide that whispered his brother's name. Euron Greyjoy had returned again. On the 4th dawn, the Silence came ashore. She was changed since last she sailed. Her hull was black as obsidian, glistening as if slick with oil. Her sails shimmered faintly, red one moment, violet the next, as though they drank the light rather than caught it. No sound came from her, not the creak of timber nor the cry of gulls, only the hiss of waves against her sides. Her crew disembarked first, the same tongueless mutes as before, though now their skin was pale as salt and their eyes filmed over with gray. They moved stiffly, like corpses stirred by some cruel tide. Then came Euron. He stepped onto the shore barefoot, his cloak flaring behind him like a shadow unfurling. The pale eye gleamed, and upon his brow he wore no crown, only a circlet of blackened steel, carved with strange runes that seemed to shift as he moved. The air itself seemed to draw back from him. The reavers gathered on the cliffs to watch. No one dared call out. Some fell to their knees, others fled. Euron stood among them, unmoving. "Brother," Euron said, his voice soft as the sea at dusk, "you look thinner than when I left you." "You were dead," Euron said. His throat was dry, his voice a whisper. "The sea took you." "The sea takes all things," Euron replied, smiling faintly. "But I am not so easily kept." He looked up at the sky, where clouds were gathering, though no storm had been foretold. "The world has grown quiet in my absence. That will not do. The time has come to wake it." He raised his hand, and the mutes brought forth a chest bound in iron. When they opened it, a sound like wind through bone filled the air. Inside lay the horn. The same horn, yet changed. Its surface was no longer dull black, but alive with light, veins of red fire pulsing through it. Euron stepped forward. "Do not sound it again. You will damn us all." Euron turned his pale eye upon him. The sea spoke to me, brother. It sang in a tongue you could not hear. I have seen the drowned gods of old, the ones that lie beneath the waves dreaming. They are not what we were taught to worship. They are greater. He lifted the horn. And I am their chosen. The wind howled across the cliffs. Men shouted, some running for the caves, others falling prostrate where they stood. Euron alone did not move. You are mad, he said. What you call gods are the devils of the deep. You bring ruin. Euron's smile widened. Ruin is only another word for creation. He pressed the horn to his lips. The sound that burst forth was like nothing Euron had ever heard. It was not music, but a force, a wave that struck the world itself. The cliffs shook, stones falling from their heights. The sea turned black, boiling. The sky darkened until no sun could be seen. Men screamed, clutching their ears as blood ran from their noses and eyes. Through the roar of it, Euron saw visions, vast and endless, a sea of shadow spreading across the world. Cities drowned in fire, towers collapsing beneath the wings of beasts too large to name. And in the heart of it all, his brother standing upon a throne of black stone, crowned in storm, his voice echoing over the ruins of men. The sound ceased. Euron fell to his knees, gasping, the world spinning around him. His ears rang, his vision swam. When he looked up, Euron stood unchanged. The horn was whole, uncracked, glowing faintly in his hands. "Do you see now, brother?" he said softly. "Do you understand?" What are you?" Aaron rasped. Euron tilted his head. "What I was meant to be." He turned toward the watching crowd. "Kneel, sons of the sea. Kneel before your true king." Some did. Others tried to flee, only to be cut down by the mutes, who moved with sudden speed, blades flashing like fish beneath water. The rest stood frozen, caught between terror and awe. Euron rose slowly. His legs trembled, but his resolve did not. "You are no king," he said. "You are a curse upon this world." Euron regarded him for a long moment. "You always were the pious one. Tell me, Damphair, if your god loves you, why does he let me live?" Euron had no answer. The crow's eye turned away, his cloak swirling in the rising wind. "I will build an empire upon the bones of the world," he said, "and when the waves rise to swallow it, I shall ride them like a dragon in flight." He strode toward his ship. The mutes followed, dragging behind them the bodies of those who had resisted. When the silence departed, the sea was still boiling. Its wake glowed faintly, red and gold, like a path of molten glass stretching eastward. Euron watched until it vanished beyond sight. Then he fell to his knees and wept. He had prayed for deliverance, but deliverance had not come. The drowned god had turned away, or perhaps he too had been swallowed by whatever Euron had awoken. That night, the Iron Islands burned. Strange fires lit the sky, blue, green, red, as if the stars themselves had fallen into the sea. Ships were torn from their moorings and hurled against the rocks by unseen hands. The people screamed in their sleep, dreaming of waves taller than mountains and eyes watching from beneath the deep. Euron did not sleep. He climbed to the cliffs once more and looked out upon the water. The sea was dark, but in its depths, faint lights glimmered, shifting, alive. He thought he heard a whisper then, soft and low, like a voice rising from beneath the waves. "He rises," it said. "He comes." Euron shuddered. He knew that voice. It was the same that had spoken to him in his dreams, the same that had called Euron from the deep. He turned away from the sea, his heart heavy. There would be no stopping his brother now. Whatever power Euron had found in the east had bound itself to him, body and soul. But still, Euron swore he would try. He would gather what remained of the faithful. He would preach, he would fight, he would drown 1,000 times if he must. The sea might have fallen silent, but the storm still lived within him. And somewhere beyond the horizon, beneath a sky of red fire, the silence sailed toward a destiny only madness could crave. The morning after the burning, smoke still hung over the Iron Islands. It rolled across the waves in slow, heavy coils, carrying with it the stink of char and salt and death. The sea itself seemed weary, its usual thunder dulled to a hoarse murmur, like a wounded beast. The few who survived the night stumbled through the wreckage of their villages in silence, too frightened to speak, too broken to pray. Euron Damphair stood upon the cliffs of Old Week, his robe stiff with soot, his hair matted by the sea wind. Below him, the shore was blackened where fire had met water. The world looked drowned already, though the waves still moved. He had spent the night in prayer, but no comfort had come. The drowned god's voice was gone, lost to the endless roar of the storm that Euron had loosed upon the world. He watched the horizon. No ship moved upon it. No gull dared to fly. Only the faint shimmer of the distant sea remained, red where the dawn struck it, as though blood ran beneath the waves. "They said the Crow's Eye has gone east again," came a voice behind him. Euron turned. The speaker was a woman wrapped in a tattered cloak of sealskin. Her face was lined with age and weather, her eyes gray as stormlight. He recognized her as Merald of Harlaw, once a salt wife, now a widow who wandered from isle to isle carrying tales. "They say he sails for Ashai," she went on, "that he means to find the Shadowlands beyond the Jade Sea." "Lies," Euron said, though he knew in his heart it was no lie. "He seeks the ends of the world. He would stand where no man was meant to stand." Merald looked at him a long moment. "And if he finds it?" Euron's gaze turned to the sea. "Then the sea itself will end." The woman made the sign of the god and left him to his thoughts. For days afterward, Euron wandered the isles, gathering what faithful still remained. The old men came, and the widows, and the young who had lost their fathers to the Crow's Eye's wars. He spoke to them of the old faith, of the drowned god's justice, of the wrath that was coming. "The sea does not forget," he told them. "Euron Greyjoy has taken from it, and the sea will take in turn. The flood will come again." He baptized them in the cold surf, one by one, until his hands were numb and his voice was hoarse. He began to feel the faint stirring of strength within him again. Not hope, for hope was gone, but purpose. When he slept, he dreamt once more. He stood in a great hall beneath the waves. Pillars of coral rose on every side, and light filtered down through the water like green fire. Upon a throne of bone and salt sat a figure vast and terrible. Its face was hidden, but its eyes burned in the dark. "You pray to me," the voice said, deep and slow as the tide. "But your prayers are weak." Euron fell to his knees. "Lord of the depths, the Crow's Eye profanes your name. He brings ruin to your seas." The figure did not move. "He brings what was always promised. You do not understand the sea you worship, priest. It does not love. It does not forgive. It takes." "Then take him," Euron pleaded. The eyes flared brighter. "Would you stand against him? With all that I am, then you will drown." Euron woke gasping, the taste of salt and blood in his mouth. That day, he gathered his followers and told them they would sail. "We will not hide while the world drowns," he said. "The Crow's Eye sails toward the Shadowlands. We will follow. If he means to wake the dark beneath the sea, then we will face it there." They set forth upon 6 ships, patched and creaking, manned by those who still dared to believe. The wind was cruel, the waves higher than any he had known, but they sailed eastward nonetheless. Days passed. The sun was seldom seen. The water grew darker the farther they went, until it seemed not blue but black, thick as oil. On the 7th night, lightning flickered upon the horizon, not white but red, silent, pulsing like the beat of a heart. Euron knew then that they were near. The air grew hot, the sea steamed, the stars vanished behind a haze of smoke, and the waves gleamed with a sickly light. The sailors muttered prayers as they rowed, their eyes wide with dread. Then they saw it, the silence. She drifted upon the black water like a corpse, her masts crooked, her sails tattered but still glowing faintly. No crew moved upon her deck. They drew alongside her, and Euron called out, but no answer came. The ship was silent indeed. He climbed aboard, his feet slick with ash. The deck was burned, the timbers blackened. The mutes lay dead where they had fallen, their eyes open and gray, their mouths twisted in silent screams. He found the horn near the mast, cracked in two. Its runes were dark, the light gone from them. He reached to touch it, and the air grew cold. Then a voice spoke behind him. "Do you come to claim my crown, brother?" Euron turned. Euron stood at the far end of the deck, barefoot, his clothes torn and scorched. His skin was pale as bone, his black hair wild in the wind. The patch was gone from his left eye. In its place was a hollow that burned faintly blue, like a coal beneath the sea. "Euron," Euron whispered. "You followed me through storm and death," Euron said. "Did you think I would not welcome you? What have you done?" Euron looked up at the sky. "I have seen the world beneath this one. The gods of old are not dead, Euron. They sleep. I woke them." Euron's heart pounded. "You woke nightmares." "Nightmares?" Euron smiled. "Dreams, brother. Dreams that shape the world. The sea is not what you thought it was. It is not your god's realm. It is his prison. I have freed him." The waves around the ship began to churn, glowing faintly from within. Euron heard a deep rumble, a sound older than thunder. "Listen," Euron said softly. "Do you hear it? The sea remembers its master." Euron stumbled back. "No man can free what was meant to sleep." Euron stepped closer. "Then I am no man." The sea erupted. A great column of water rose into the air, twisting like a serpent. Within it, Euron glimpsed movement, vast shapes, eyes burning like suns, wings unfurling across the deep. Euron threw back his head and laughed, his voice lost in the roar of the tide. Euron fell to his knees, the wind tearing at his robes. He tried to pray, but the words would not come. The waves rose higher, the sky split with fire, and then, all at once, there was silence. When he lifted his head, the ship was gone. He knelt upon a small raft of driftwood, the sea calm around him, the sky pale and empty. No sign of his brother remained, only the faint echo of laughter carried by the wind. Euron closed his eyes. "What is dead may never die," he whispered. But this time, the sea did not answer. When Euron Damphair awoke again, he lay upon the deck of a ship not his own. The timbers were pale as bone, the sails patched and gray, and the air smelled of salt, blood, and old smoke. He had no memory of being pulled from the sea, yet he lived. The waves lapped gently against the hull, and for the first time in an age, the waters were calm. A shadow moved above him. A man knelt beside him, broad-shouldered, his hair streaked with gray, his face drawn with lines of grief and salt. Victarion Greyjoy. "You're alive," Euron croaked. Victarion nodded, his mouth grim. "Barely. The gods drowned the fleet. I thought you dead." "I should be," Euron murmured, sitting up. His muscles burned, his hands trembling. The sea does not spare me for kindness, only purpose. Victarion looked toward the horizon, where the sun bled faintly through a veil of mist. The crow's eye is gone. His ship burned, his men drowned. The waters swallowed him whole. Aeron's eyes narrowed. You saw him die? No. Victarion's jaw tightened. But none could live through that storm. Even the strongest ship could not survive it. The silence was never a ship, Euron said softly. It was his altar. Victarion frowned. Enough of riddles. He's dead, priest. Let him be. Euron rose unsteadily, gripping the mast for support. You do not understand, brother. Euron Greyjoy cannot die. He has become something the sea itself obeys. I saw him beneath the waves, and the ocean burned around him. Victarion said nothing. His gaze drifted to the east, where dark clouds still loomed beyond the mists. The men whisper that you called this doom down upon us, that your prayers to the drowned god woke the storm. Euron turned to him, his expression fierce. If I had such power, I would have struck Euron down the moment he first defied the god, but I am only a servant. The sea moves by its own will. Then perhaps it no longer knows its will, Victarion muttered. For a time they stood in silence, the ship creaking beneath them. The wind carried the faint cries of gulls, though none could be seen. At last, Euron spoke. Where do you sail now? Victarion hesitated. Nowhere, perhaps. There is little left to rule. The Ironborn are scattered. Half our captains drowned, the rest fled to the Greenlands or turned to piracy. The islands? Burned, Victarion said flatly. Famine, sickness, and ghosts. Pike is empty but for crows. Euron closed his eyes. The sea reclaims its own. Victarion gripped his shoulder. Then come with me. Let the past sink. We can find peace somewhere beyond this cursed water. Peace? Euron opened his eyes, and for a heartbeat they blazed with the fire of prophecy. There can be no peace while Euron's shadow falls upon the sea. You would flee, but there is nowhere left to flee to. Victarion drew back, uneasy. You speak as though you know his fate. I do, Euron said, for he is bound to me as the tide to the moon. Where I walk, his shadow follows. I feel him still. Victarion turned away. Then you feel ghosts. The crow's eye is dead. But that night, as the brothers drifted upon the dark water, a sound rose from the deep, a faint, mournful wail, like the echo of a horn carried across leagues of sea. Victarion froze at the helm. Euron's eyes flew open, wide with terror. The horn's call faded slowly, but the air remained heavy with its memory. When dawn came, Victarion was gone. His armor lay by the mast, his sword beside it, but of the man himself, no trace remained. Only wet footprints led to the railing and ended there. Euron stood alone on the deck, the sea stretching endless and empty around him. He raised his face to the wind and whispered a prayer. What is dead may never die. But as he spoke, he heard laughter, soft and distant, carried on the salt air. He looked east. The horizon was bleeding again, though no sun had yet risen. The water glowed faintly red, and from its depths came a stirring, as if something vast moved far below. Euron's heart clenched. Euron, he breathed. The sea around the ship began to churn. Bubbles rose from the deep, hissing as they broke the surface. The wind shifted, cold and sharp. Then a shape appeared, a black mass rising slowly from the water, slick and gleaming. It was not the Silence, though its outline was similar. This ship was larger, its hull made of strange metal that shimmered with colors no mortal eye should see. Its sails were of woven shadow, and from its prow hung chains that reached into the sea. The smell of rot and smoke filled the air, and upon its deck stood Euron Greyjoy. He wore no crown, no cloak. His chest was bare, his skin marked with runes that glowed faintly blue. His left eye socket burned like a coal, and the other, the pale one, gleamed brighter than ever. "Did I not tell you, brother?" Euron called across the waves. "The sea is mine now." Euron fell to his knees. "What are you?" Euron spread his arms. "What I was meant to be. I have sailed beyond the edge of the world and returned. The sea beneath the sea knows my name." "Abomination," Euron whispered. "Prophet," Euron replied with a laugh. "You prayed to the depths, and the depths answered, but not in the way you wished." The strange ship drifted closer, its hull whispering against the water. Euron could see faces within the shadows of its sails, faces twisted in silent agony, men and women both, their mouths open as though still screaming. Euron gestured toward them. "My crew, faithful and eternal." "Release them!" Euron cried. "They are not yours to keep." Euron's smile was cold. "They are the price. Every god demands one." The waves struck the hull of Euron's ship, nearly toppling him. He clung to the mast as Euron's laughter rolled across the sea. "I will make a new world, brother," Euron said. "A world without gods, only the sea, and me upon its throne." Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the black ship began to fade, its form dissolving into mist. The laughter lingered, echoing until even the wind carried it away. When silence returned, Euron was alone once more. The sea lay calm, the sky gray and endless. He sank to the deck, his strength gone. His tears mingled with the salt water that pooled at his feet. "What is dead may never die," he whispered again, "but rises harder and stronger." His voice faltered. "But what if death no longer ends?" The wind gave no answer. He sat there until night fell, staring eastward, where the red glow still shimmered faintly beneath the horizon, a reminder that the crow's eye yet lived, somewhere beyond the sight of men, laughing in the dark beneath the sea. The years that followed were years of silence. The winds fell weak about the Iron Islands, and the waves lost their old rhythm. The sea seemed to sleep. What ships still dared to leave their harbors came back with hulls crusted in strange coral, and crews that muttered in their dreams. The priests of the drowned god whispered that the ocean had grown deep beyond measure, that something vast breathed beneath its skin. Euron Damphair endured. He lived like a wraith among the cliffs of Old Wick, half man, half memory. His beard had turned white as sea foam, his eyes hollow from nights without rest. Yet his faith burned stubbornly on, the last spark in a drowned world. Each dawn he stood knee-deep in the surf, calling out the old prayers, though the god gave no answer. Then, one morning, the wind changed. It came hard from the east, sharp with salt and ash. The gulls fled before it, and the water darkened. Euron felt the old terror rise again in his chest. He knew that wind. He had felt it once before, when Euron Greyjoy returned from the ends of the world. Before nightfall, a single ship appeared upon the horizon. Its sail was black, its hull red where the sunset struck it. No oars moved, no voices called. It glided toward the cliffs like a ghost. The islanders saw it and barred their doors, but Euron walked to the shore alone. When the ship grounded upon the shingle, a single figure stepped down. He was robed in gray, his face hidden beneath a hood. He moved with slow, deliberate steps until he stood before the priest. For a long moment, they regarded one another in silence, the tide whispering around their feet. At last, Euron spoke. You have his look about you." The stranger lowered his hood. His hair was dark, though streaked with silver, his skin pale as the moon. One eye was blue, the other gray. "My name is Harl, son of Euron," he said, "born of a storm upon the Jade Sea. My father is gone, swallowed by the depths, but I have come to finish what he began." Euron's knees weakened. Then the sea truly gave him issue. The curse is not ended. "The sea gave him everything," the youth said quietly, "and it gives to me." He raised his hand. Upon his palm was burned the shape of a kraken, its tentacles coiled around a spiral eye. The mark glowed faintly when the wind touched it. Euron staggered back. "That mark is blasphemy." "It is truth," the boy replied. "The sea is awake. It called to me across the deeps, and I came." The water began to rise around them, swirling though the night was calm. The waves lapped higher, tasting the rocks, pulling at the sand. Euron lifted his staff. "You are not the sea's prophet. You are its plague. Leave these isles." The boy smiled, and the light of his mark flared brighter. "You do not command the tide, old priest. You never did." The wind howled. The surf leapt higher, striking the cliffs behind them. From far out in the darkness came a deep, slow boom, the heartbeat of the ocean. Euron felt it through the soles of his feet, through his bones. He thought of Euron's laughter and the horn that had once split the sky. He dropped to his knees, pressing his palms to the water. "Drowned God," he cried. "If you still rule the deeps, show me your wrath. Strike down this spawn of shadow." For a moment, nothing changed. Then lightning flashed across the sea, white and blinding. It struck the black ship, splitting it from bow to stern. Fire burst forth. Green fire, hissing as it met the rain. The boy turned toward it, unafraid. "The god answers you," he said, "but not in the way you think." The next wave struck with the strength of mountains. It hurled them both from the shore, tumbling through the foam. Euron felt himself dragged beneath, the water cold as iron. He opened his mouth to shout and swallowed the sea instead. In that darkness, he saw again the shapes he had seen in dreams, great coils winding through the deep, eyes like suns burning in the gloom. And among them he saw Euron, his brother, his face calm and smiling, his voice a whisper in the water. "Did you think I would rest, Damphair? What is dead may never die." Euron reached for him, but his hand closed on emptiness. When he woke, he lay upon the shore once more. The storm had passed. The sea was quiet again, the ship gone, the boy nowhere to be found. Only the faint smell of smoke lingered, and a single mark upon the sand, a spiral slowly filling with water. He crawled to it and traced its edges with a trembling finger. The tide washed over it, erasing the sign, but the shape remained burned into his mind. He lifted his eyes to the horizon. The sun was rising, pale and cold, and far off he thought he saw movement, waves gathering, slow but certain, as if the ocean itself were preparing to rise. Euron bowed his head. "Then it begins anew," he whispered. "The sea remembers." He stood, water streaming from his robes, and faced the wind. Though his heart was heavy, his voice was strong when he spoke the ancient words. "What is dead may never die." The sea answered at last, not with thunder, nor with laughter, but with a deep, slow sigh, like the breath of a sleeping god. And for the first time in many years, Euron Damphair felt something stir within him that might almost have been peace. Whether the peace of salvation or of doom, he could not tell. But he knew the world would drown again, as it always had, and rise harder and stronger from the depths. And somewhere beyond the gray horizon, where the sun met the sea. A single red sail caught the light and vanished into mist.